rubbish viewers from the dawn of time. This is I am Foreman Scrapyard back for another go. Today,
Finally.
today we're going to be looking at Doctor Who Sword of Orion, which is the second released 8th Doctor story from Big Finish. It was released in February 2001. Stars Paul McGann and India Fisher, and it was written and directed by Nicholas Briggs.
Yes.
You always do this.
What?
At the beginning of like every episode, I'll say this sort of stuff. It's like traditional to say it, and you'll be like, "Yes."
Right. You just like stop talking, and I don't know how to respond.
Anyway, should we get into it, or do you want to talk if you liked it first, or should we just get into the story?
Nah, let's get into the plot. Dude.
Okay, so we sort of pick up pretty close to after where Storm Morning left off, and the Doctor and Charlie are sort of trying to find a cure for Ramsey, who's become very dry.
Anyway.
He's become quite dry. Ramsey is the space pterodactyl, or the time vortex pterodactyl, from last story, from Storm Morning.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of sick, so the Doctor sort of doesn't quite know what to do. He thinks putting him back in the time vortex might actually, finish him off and kill him, because he might not be able to withstand it or something like that. So the Doctor sort of tries to take Ramsey and Charlie with him to this market, which gave me it sort of felt like one of those Star Wars markets that's just sort of on like an asteroid in the middle of space.
Yeah.
Or like maybe like Akaten or something like that.
Yeah.
From the Rings of Akaten.
But before they get to the market, there's a bit of a pre-title sting, where basically there's a couple of sort of like, I guess like scavengers in space, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go and bloody raid this Star Destroyer, mate." There's just like lying there.
Yeah, every time they mentioned Star Destroyer, it like threw me off.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was like, "That's a Star Wars name, you moron." But
yeah. Also, I should mention that one of the scavengers was voiced by Mark Gatiss.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
I did not pick that at all.
Yeah, so they put their space suits on and they like go to the Star Destroyer, and then they get killed by a Cyberman.
Yeah, which like does he say something and then cuts the titles?
Yeah, I think so. He's like, you'll be destroyed or something.
They will be excellent. You will be destroyed, and then it like cuts the titles, or the audio version or whatever.
Cuts to the opening titles the opening bloody tune that Max loves so much.
I think I've grown to like it more, but so the Doctor sort of walks around this marketplace, which is the best way to describe it. Really, it's just sort of like a junk market in the middle of nowhere. So there's like no rule of law or anything like that.
And Charlie's like sexually harassed by like this like random alien.
Kind of like random alien just comes up and like hits on Charlie, and Charlie's like no, and he like that's not
yeah.
And then they like find a book, but it's not quite the right thing. But they're basically trying to find someone who knows about what Ramsey has and could help them, but they sort of forget about all that when they go back to the TARDIS because they couldn't find whatever they were looking for. But then like the ship that the TARDIS was on, they like get separated from it.
Yeah.
And there's like this other like scavenger ship that they have to fiddle around because they're trying to scavenge the ship that the TARDIS is on, so they have to kind of bludge their way onto the other ship. I thought the crew was really good.
Yeah, I really liked the sort of the different personalities and the power struggle between them. I thought it was well written.
Like it was, and there was one realistic character whose name I forgot, but who sort of just thinks that the Doctor's this kind of shady bastard. Like he's just like turned up. Why would we trust him?
Yeah, and also
good attitude, which.
What were you saying?
Yeah, it's just sort of that attitude they don't really play with enough, because like, if the Doctor was to turn up, you'd just be like, who the hell are you? Go away, we don't like you.
Yeah.
And get really suspicious, but no, everyone thinks he's like God in the modern series.
And the captain of the scavengers is named Diva.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Very subtle writing from Nicholas Briggs.
But then there's a bit of walkabout on the ship, which was good, but wasn't anything really to talk about. And then we sort of cut to this Cybermat, or something is fiddling with like the cables.
Yeah.
And then it only leaves the life support on, which is like a really clever way of doing the Cybermat.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, in the 10th planet, they sort of established the whole Cybermen were people once sort of thing motif.
I think they do, because it's like the twin planet of Earth, like Mondas is like.
But then they just don't touch on it for the rest of the series, like the whole classic series. They just don't do any Cybermen trying to convert stories.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like the first, or like among the very early sort of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Cybermen in the classic series just sort of seem like, you know, they're the recognizable, but they're sort of standard aliens who just try to take over the Earth, sort of dominate thing. They never really didn't use the conversion thing, so it was sort of good to add this sort of depth to Cybermen who were just sort of basically in the classic series. As much as the stories were good, they were just sort of robots.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember reference to conversion after the 10th planet. So yeah.
I was thinking about that when I was listening, and I sort of had a sort of flash forward that I'd say that, and then you'd like whittle off all the episodes that I was how I was wrong. But no, it turned out well.
Yeah.
And then sort of there's a running Cyberman in this.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You didn't like it?
Nah, not a fan of running Cybermen.
The thing with running Cybermen and I is obviously they were in the Nightmare in Silver. And like they ran and you saw them run.
Yeah.
But like I kind of think that when, obviously because this is audio, you don't see anything, but like when the character that you're following or the narrative that you're following, God's eye view, when it's just like a flash, I think that's fine. Where you don't actually see it, because they're actually used well here. Like in the running Cybermen in the Nightmare in Silver, it's just sort of like they like use it in combat and you see everything, but this sort of adds up to the sort of tense horror elements of the Cybermen. It's just too fast to be seen.
I have like two reasons why I don't like running Cybermen. One is that I just find it hard to get my head around like this sort of clunky metal creature like running at any sort of speed.
Yeah, and even in like Nightmare in Silver, it's really clunky. It's just sort of like they've sped up the footage and added some motion blur.
Yeah, and also like I think the cool thing about Cybermen is that because of all their like, you know, enhancements, they'll never tire. They'll just keep going. So I feel like they won't need to run because they're going to catch up with you anyway, because you'll eventually get tired, but they'll just keep coming.
I would agree with that, but I felt like, you know, they did it, and the way that they did it was certainly superior to the actual TV show.
Oh yeah, it was better. There was no like bullet time or anything. It was just
they didn't like go full Neo in the Matrix. But,
the doctor's just like, oh, they're running.
Yeah. I thought it was really good, and then we sort of
we jumped ahead a bit, but
yeah, we have jumped ahead a bit, but yeah, maybe we should just sort of move forward a little bit, because it's sort of, as much as it is good, we just sort of, the next part and a bit, we just sort of deal with character dynamics and stuff, and nothing plot like actually happens.
Yes. So
except that there's, just to backtrack a little bit, when the guys, like the people on the scavenger ship found the doctor, they were like standing over a dead body, which is
I was gonna say we should probably get to that.
And then there was sort of the whole, did you kill them? And then the doctor was being like very rational, and there was just a few other characters on the boat on the ship who were being really rational. And they were like, mate, he's been bloody burnt to death. How would this man have done it?
Yeah.
And there's this one character who's like, oh no, it was definitely him.
Yeah. The doctor's we'd be covered head to toe in blood if we had done this, mate.
Yeah, and Charlie was like getting really pissy with him.
Yeah.
But with the other crew members, which is good about Charlie, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then we sort of find out that the captain is actually from Earth, because sort of through the part and a half I just mentioned, just more character stuff, we sort of learn that there's this android and human war going on in Orion, which is a planet.
The Orion bloody system or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we find out that they're sort of fighting the, not replicants, but androids, wasn't it? Yeah. Androids.
Yeah.
And then Charlie does the classic Doctor Who trying to deal with political issues things of saying, oh, it's just like the slave traders back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a bit sort of Orphan 55-y, in my opinion. Just sort of like a turn to camera. I thought that sort of was a bit crap, but yeah, we find out that this captain is an imposter who's, well, just someone from Earth who's trying to like recruit the Cybermen into the war from Orion. And
Max, mate, you're bloody jumping ahead a lot.
Yeah, sorry.
You jumped like 3 episodes ahead.
Do you want me to rein it back in?
Yes, just rein it back in.
Okay, you can continue.
Alright, so so they start being picked off, the sort of scavengers.
Yeah.
And this story is a bit more complicated than Storm Warning. Like there's like more characters to follow, so it's a bit hard to sort of summarize. But basically, there's like they've got a cybermat sort of going around on the ship, and
that sort of it's cutting off life support and stuff. Well, it's not cutting off life support; it's cutting off everything except life support, because obviously in this story they've got the very present mindset that we need to convert these people.
Yeah, and
something that's new.
A couple of the characters become like semi-converted so they can kind of like infiltrate.
Yeah, you did have a brief concern not a brief concern, you did have a concern that you told me that you thought this was a bit similar to the Series 12 penultimate episode, Ascension of the Cybermen. Would you like to...
Well, it wasn't really a concern, it was just like an interesting thing, but I feel like it's kind of shares some similar plot points in that they're on this like sort of semi-abandoned Cyberman ship, and there's lots of sort of dormant Cybermen that are slowly waking up. And yeah, especially like the latter half of Ascension of the Cybermen, I feel is very similar to sort of Orion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of picking off, and then the doctors get sort of the doctor's getting quite wary of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then we sort of, to go back to where I was, because we don't need to go linearly. This is a review, not a summary.
Yeah.
We find out that this captain is an imposter who's like come from Earth to recruit the Cybermen in the war against the androids.
Yeah.
And that she, because she was commanding the Diva, was her name, wasn't it?
Yeah, Diva.
Because she was commanding like the scrap ship, and she knew the ship had come from Telos in the ice tombs.
Yeah.
But that's why they purposefully went to scrap it. But because she just knew that she could perhaps persuade them to join them with.
Yeah. Well, it's more like they wanted to like steal the technology.
Yeah. They wanted the the thingy.
Yeah, and the doctor's like, "Nah, mate, can't do that." And Diva's like, "Yeah, all right." That was a pretty weak part of the story for me. Like she's just like, "Yeah, okay." Like,
yeah, that wasn't the brightest light. And then we sort of find out that the Cybermen, which this part of the story gave me sort of the beginning of Asylum of the Daleks kind of vibes.
Yeah.
I like Asylum of the Daleks just to put you out. This is Series 7 episode, just to let you know in the context of this. We find out that the Cybermen's ship was like destroyed by Ion Storm, and they've sort of been crippled by the ship, and the Cybermen have been crippled by the storm.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how they were going to survive it a second time. I think the doctor said something like, "Oh, you've just had blind faith, have you?"
Yeah.
And then he is there anything else you want to say before we cut to the end of the story?
I don't know. They just like run off the ship, basically.
Yeah.
And Charlie and Diva get sucked out, but Diva gives Charlie her suit, her spacesuit, so Diva dies. Yeah. Oh, well, she floats off in space.
Yeah, and before that, the Doctor sort of agrees that he'll shield the Cyberman ship from the Ion Storm using the TARDIS's power, but then we just cut from that to them being blasted out into space. And then Charlie and the Doctor sort of have a little chat.
Yeah,
once they got back to the TARDIS.
They kind of do the Orphan 55 thing where they like summarize the story's themes for you.
Yeah.
Which is and
yeah.
Actually, no, I won't get ahead of myself, but like it's not the last story in this range to do that.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh. But then when they get into the TARDIS, there was a nice little discord between Charlie and the Doctor. Like the Doctor's like talking about upholding good and the laws of like time. And then Charlie's like, "Oh, is this where you get all hero and mysterious with me?" And the Doctor says, "No, this is when I get to put the kettle on." And then it sort of cuts the titles, which I thought was a nice way to end it, which sort of felt a bit like the end of Dragonfire when the Seventh Doctor was with Ace, and he was like, "Oh, I'll think of the third rule out by the time we get to Perryvale."
Yeah.
That sort of vibe. I thought it was a nice little way to end it.
They're kind of establishing the like sort of characteristic of the Eighth Doctor that he's like really into tea, because like every Doctor needs like some sort of thing like that.
Yeah, and because he's Edwardian as well, and I think he mentioned it a few times in Storm Warning.
Yeah,
and that was a nice sort of way to end the story. But
yeah,
what would you give that out of a 10?
Yeah, so to summarize my thoughts, I thought it was a big improvement from Storm Warning. I thought it was a very effective Cyberman story. I really liked the supporting characters, and yeah, it was just a pretty good story. It had a couple of hiccups, but like overall, I thought it was pretty good.
None as big as Storm Warning's hiccups.
Yeah, the like episode long hiccup that was episode 3 in Storm Warning. But yeah, I'd give sort of Orion an 8 out of 10.
Interesting. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just before I get into my thoughts, where would you put this on the scale of Cyberman stories? Like, what's it better than? What's it worse than?
Well, it's not as good as stories like World Enough in Time. I think I like the 10th Planet more than this. Yeah, it's better than, say...
Better than Rise of Cyberman Age of Steel?
I have to rewatch that story. But
actually, no, that's not. But it's better than.
It's better than like Nightmare in Silver, and
well,
like
that's not hard.
Yeah,
it's probably better than Death in Heaven as well. Dark Water.
I think Dark Water is pretty good. Like Dark Water is probably better than sort of Orion, but it sort of Orion's better than Death in Heaven.
We'll get into that in the main show, but yeah, I think it was a really solid story. It's better than Storm Warning by leaps and bounds. What didn't really only had like a few minute-long hiccups. It didn't really do anything bad. It was sort of it brought the Cybermen back to their roots of wanting to convert people, and yeah, I'd give it an 8 out of 10 as well. So currently, your favorite 8th Doctor audio that we've listened to in this timeline.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, well, I guess we'll be back either this week or next week, depending on where you are in the time vortex. Or on
just still the Avians.
Yeah. And this time next week, we'll be doing the Stones of Venice. Good luck and goodbye.